This episode is sponsored by New Vision Projects, and everybody has heard the horror stories that happen. They have a friend of a friend or a neighbor that's been renovating for years on end, or they've been building a home and it just hasn't gone the way that it needed to go. Budgets are blown through the roof, timelines, forget about them. New Vision Projects has an incredibly strong track record for over 15 years of working with customers, serving them at the highest level. If you are considering building or renovating, check them out on Instagram at New Vision Projects or at newvisionprojects.com. Building the homes you want with the confidence you need. New Vision has you covered. Let them show you why they're different. Back to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Our guest today, all the way from Idaho, happy Thanksgiving, brother, Mr. David Hori is joining us today. David, excited to have you on. David has spent last decade or so working through some private equity venture-based exits and working with contractors, contract companies, helping them scale through chaos, implementing strategy, and helping them whether they're getting ready to sell the business, whether they are looking to just dial in their operations. Has a huge, vast background of experience, and very delighted to have him here today. David, what is going on, brother?
Happy Friday. Happy to be here with you.
It is. It's Friday at the day that we are recording, and it's exciting. It's getting into the evening now, so I know you got dinner probably coming up, family stuff coming up. But man, happy you're here and spending some time with us today.
Likewise.
David, man, we have a lot to talk about. We were talking offline about what it is that you're trying to do, looking at number of businesses to buy and sell, and I want to get into that. Why don't you give everybody a bit of a background?
Yeah.
Of who you are, what it is that you're up to.
Sure. So I think you mentioned the last 10 years of my life have been in VC funded startups, where God blessed me and partnered me with 3 different founders. And of those 3 founders, ultimately, the businesses that we built together exited via acquisition. And amazing experiences. There's no way to substitute the learnings that you get in that kind of compressed space where you have an idea and money and you have to build something really quickly from nothing in order to create value. So tremendous learning experience and positive outcomes. And what I've found is there's an outsized benefit to 2 people, the investor and the founder, ultimately, the owner. And so coming out of that 3rd acquisition, where I got to transition things, we were acquired by Toyota and transition things into Japan. And that was really a great experience. I realized if I want the full benefit of building something, I need to be the investor owner. And so that's led me in the last 18 months down this path of acquiring my own business and really looking to put my own kind of dent in the universe, as they say.
Hell yeah. You said that, you were lucky by the strike of God to line you up between, the owners and the capital, and you found you sort of right in the middle to help deploy some of this strategy. But I don't know. Is it all circumstance? How did you get involved in this, in the first deal we were talking about? Was it pro.com?
Mm-hmm.
How did we get
involved
here?
Pro.com was actually my second. My first came from, I was helping a CEO at a publicly traded company hire an executive assistant, and realized pretty quickly that his values and my values did not align. And so that was one of the shortest lived engagements to date that I've ever had with an executive. And coming out of that, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I was kind of, doing some consulting work for Microsoft. And somebody that I worked with at that company called me up and said, "Hey, I just left. I really thought that had tremendous potential and like the way that you built things and your values. I'm in a VC funded startup. Do you want to come join me since you have this background in building and creating, teams, process, all of that stuff? Do you want to come join me in that venture?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'm out of here. I want to move quick. I got big ideas and they're never going to see the light of day at Microsoft." So I jumped in.
Oh yeah. Big ideas and big actions are very different though. I think a lot of people have big ideas, but it's a lot more rare that people take big actions towards those big ideas.
Hmm. Yeah. I think people often ask, like, what's the most impactful thing you've done? And it's hard for me to articulate one thing. I think, and you probably appreciate this, coming from construction, it's the sum total of these tiny little things that you put in place that start to really compound. And it's not like one change that you made to your business that got you to where you are today, probably. It's just hundreds, if not thousands, of these little things that incrementally up level your performance.
Yeah, these little iterations made over time. It's not one big giant leap, or very rarely, right? Those big giant leaps that people think, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to have the biggest week of my life right now, or the biggest day, and this is going to be an absolute game changer. And those days do come, and those weeks do come, but they're rare compared to just the ongoing. Hey, I'm just going to have a huge next 5 years, right? To step back and look at this, because people, I've heard it been said a number of times, and I'm paraphrasing here, but people underestimate or overestimate how much they can get done in a year and underestimate how much they can get done in 10 years. And so by expanding that horizon, knowing that every day you're just going to be incrementally turning these dials in different places in the business, dialing them up, scaling them back, monitoring, dialing them up, scaling them back, it moves things in the right direction, in the trajectory that you want to go, but oftentimes not as quickly as you want it to, not as quickly as you expect it to. And I think if you can get your head behind that and just really fall in love with the journey and the understanding of learning the dials that you turn, knowing which ones you've turned too far and you need to dial back on, understanding new people on the way, new connections on the way, and knowing that you're building something meaningful, you're going to be able to stand back, maybe not next week and say, look how far we've come. Maybe not next year to say, hey, look how far we've come, but in 5 years, 10 years, wow, life is gonna look a lot different. But people often overestimate how much they're gonna get done in a year when they're setting out their, 90-day, 120-day, 6-month Q4 goals. There's a lot of work to do, and not a lot of people have that skill of prioritizing, being able to buy back their time so they can really work on the things that they need to move their business forward. But those days do come,
Yeah.
and they're rare. And they're rare. Man, what's your experience with these businesses that you've been working with? What are a lot of them? Because I don't know if they were all being built to be sold, or if it was a scenario where they were built to a point where now it became appealing for a buyer to buy. When somebody's starting a business or they're running a business, what's your advice to them if they are thinking at some point that they do want to sell? What are the top 3 things, top 5 things that most people get wrong, and what do they absolutely need to focus on?
Yeah, there are absolutely trends that are easy to pinpoint when I'm speaking to business owners. And more often than not, this is going to be one that I think you resonate with. They're trying to sell a job, not a business. And it's a job because they don't have a team, they don't have processes that average people can run. Maybe they've built processes that this one unicorn GM they have, or manager runs pretty well. But if that person ever left, they'd be up a creek. And then there's not consistent performance and delivery, right? So those are 3 things right off the bat that if you want to really drive value in a way that attracts potential buyers. And that is, I think, the right way to frame it. You said it is you get to a certain size where you attract that kind of attention, and then ultimately you're going to have to use like what are we trying to achieve here? Is it an exit? Is it delivering long-term value? Is it building a portfolio of businesses to leverage that?
Yeah, what you said there was super powerful because I have these conversations with business owners all the time, especially in trades and home service based businesses, because typically you get into it, you start the company because you're good at something. Usually, you have a skill that you're really great at, whether you're an electrician or a plumber or a drywaller or a painter, and you're good at one of these things. So you think, okay, I'm going to start my own business. This makes sense, but you don't learn the skills along the way to grow the company. You do but very, very slowly and not very well. And so you still default to, I'm the one that needs to be on the tools. I'm the one that needs to be on the paintbrush. I'm the one that needs to be on the hammer, versus being able to build out the systems that you actually need to replicate that if you were to scale. And I love what you said about that unicorn employee, because quite often it's like, okay, that next step for the business owner is to say, all right, I'm going to go and take care of this stuff. And I'm going to hire this one person that is now going to take on meeting with the customers. They're going to be head of production. They're going to also be managing all of the invoicing, and they're going to pick up my laundry, and they're going to pick up the printer ink for the company computer. And you're like, why can't I just find a person that's going to do all of that? And it's nice on paper. But when you start building these wild operating procedures around that one specific person, that if they left, you would never find somebody to replace them, you are in grave danger, my friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm literally looking at a business now. That's the case where they have an amazing GM that has run every aspect of the business and the owners trust explicitly, which sounds great. And if that person ever left, it would be nearly impossible to replace them, and especially in the market they're in. You know, like if they're in a major city where there's going to be dozens of potential people that have a similar experience, maybe you can mitigate that risk a little bit. But in a place where the population's in the thousands, good luck. It's really, really, you're like you said, a precarious position.
Well, just pulling from a labor pool, right? A geographically located labor pool is going to be pretty tough to do,
Mhm.
right? So one of the things you have to do is, like, if you have a great service or a great product that you're selling, okay, well, you need to look at the market, right? What are the risks of the market when we are considering deploying this as a business, or we're working? And one of those things quite often comes to labor. Like we work in we're just outside of Vancouver right now, but there's a lot of small little pockets that are 45 minutes away, an hour away outside of the Vancouver area, where there's, quite a few companies, but there's just not a lot of people out there that you can really pick from. Or further up, where, we're doing some work up in the Okanagan area, which for those that are listening right now is about 4.5 hours outside of Vancouver. The labor pool is pretty small. Like, everybody there, they've moved up there, and if they are a really good technician, they're a great tradesperson, they're sort of starting their own company and they want to work for themselves. But to find good staff and good employees that want to come and work for it is tough. So that's one thing that you do need to consider, is the geographical restrictions of employment, specifically in that marketplace and for what it is that you're trying to offer.
You said something that I wanted to kind of tease out too, where even business owners that recognize, okay, I'm not going to design something that a unicorn can run, right? I'm going to be pretty realistic. I'm really good at, being an electrician. I'm going to go hire a foreman or whatever that is. Um, that makes sense on paper, but a lot of times creates this prison where now you're the glue that holds these different positions together. And if you're not hiring with intention and a strategy in place, and what I've like, this happened at the highest levels, like again, in the VC funded startup, one of them, these two founders became the admin glue where all the leaders had to come to them to get the context and the decision and run things by them, because they hired a salesperson, a marketing person, customer service. They did all the right things on paper to build out a team, But what was left was, they connected everybody, and they were ultimately still the bottleneck. Does that make sense?
Real quick before we get back to the show, if you have heard anything on this podcast that has resonated with you, or if it's helped you in any way, appreciate more than anything in the world if you could go hit that subscribe button or leave us a review. It helps us tremendously. I want to go back to being able to continue to serve and do more and more and help out and get bigger and bigger guests on, better and better. The only way that I can do that is with your help. I'm so honored to be here. Let's get back to the show. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. Yeah, 100% it makes sense. And
So,
and quite often that's a trap that people put themselves in, and they wonder why they can't scale, but they also
Mhm.
don't want to get out of that because they don't want to give up the information that they have, because they feel that for whatever reason they're never going to be able to give enough context to another individual, which means that if people are reporting to them all the time to make the decisions, then nobody is going to be able to make a decision if they're not around, ultimately bottlenecking the entire company. And I think a lot of business owners, if they look inwardly at themselves and ask what the biggest bottlenecks are in their business, 9 out of 10 times it's going to be the founder. 9 out of 10 times it's going to be the owner or the general manager who, they've put themselves in that position, and they can't see a way out because too many decisions have to go through them, and they can't whiteboard like which decisions are going to be made by who's now going to own it. Or I've seen a lot of times people fall into the trap of they give partial ownership and partial decision making to a department or to another person. And if that person isn't making the right decisions, or as soon as they make a mistake, that founder or that owner jumps back in and will pull that responsibility back and take that on again. And all of a sudden you get into this cycle of like, you're not letting enough mistakes be made. You're not handing over that responsibility in a way that person really feels empowered and trusted to make that. So even if you delegate that trust out again, chances are they're still going to come back to you and continue to ask you for your input, for your information, because they don't feel comfortable making these decisions, because they feel that they're under a magnifying glass and you're going to be judging them for all the decisions that they're making. And it's just not scalable.
Absolutely. I've accidentally gotten into the coaching space because I am talking to so many business owners that want to sell their business, or are stuck in some capacity. And a lot of times, one thing I encounter a lot is, oh, I don't know what else to do. Like I can't grow, I can't crest this milestone, so I'm going to sell. And partnering with somebody like me can help ultimately break them free from that rut and put them on a different trajectory. And again, one of the things that I always start with is looking at how do we get essentially buy back the owner's time and make sure that they're in higher leverage activities. Because again, the answer of let's quickly hire a salesperson because sales is the first bottleneck might temporarily move you forward, but ultimately leaves you as the owner with like all this admin and other things that actually are siphoning off you and your energy and your resources and time from the high leverage activities.
Well, I think one of the things that people need to get clear on when they're hiring people is, if you're offloading tasks from your plate, what is it that you're going to be putting in your calendar in place of that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. So it's like and you see this a lot, right? It's I have no meetings. I don't have anything. I get to golf, 2-3 times a week, but cool, I have this time, but my business isn't moving forward. It's like, I get it. Well, you're not replacing that time that you're paying somebody else to do. You now have more money going out. You are having these tasks get off your plate, but you're actually not moving anything forward. You're staying in the same place, and it's costing you more money because you have not set up your day, set up your week, set up your month, set up these key activities that are going to be in place of these activities that you are taking off of your plate. And you can use your time however you need to do that. But quite often, putting new people into new positions in the company without a strategy, or hiring new people to come in and take certain items off of your plate without a strategy for what it is that you're going to do or what it is that you're going to have in place of those activities, is going to cost more money. You're not going to get any further ahead. because you don't have that discipline or that vision or the alignment in your vision to set those tasks in your calendar to make sure that you're really chomping at things to start making good ground the way that you envisioned it.
Call it management by abdication, not delegation. You're just like, all right, you're here. I'm hands off now, and you step away. And no, 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 no. You got to delegate and specify exactly what the outcomes are. And to your point, then what does this enable me to do to elevate the trajectory of the business?
What are the things that you look for right away? You're analyzing a lot of businesses that are coming your way. What are the biggest red flags that you sort of see, or can you break down for us a bit of a framework or what it is that you specifically look for when you're looking at your deal flow that's coming in? What are absolute non-negotiables? What are things that you would maybe move into a tier of, okay, I'm gonna actually go forward with letter of intent versus start looking under the hood, and then once we get into that point, what are the things that you're looking for more closely before you're considering making an offer on that business?
Yeah. Uh, so there's a couple of things that I would say that they're on a sliding scale, and there's a lot of different inputs that can influence this. But broadly, I'm looking first and foremost at tenure. If you're sending me a business that's only been around 3 years, like they haven't gone through the hard yards yet, and it's premature to start offering them money for whatever they've built. I'm looking at businesses that have been around 10 plus years because they've gone through economic cycles, they've hardened their systems probably, and they're survivors, right? Things that have persisted for 10 years are more likely to persist into the future. So tenure is one of them. Number of employees is the second big filter. So even if you've somehow managed to keep your business going for 10 years, but you only have 3 employees or a bunch of contractors, or you've cobbled together some part-time people, that's not going to drive a lot of value and be less interesting to me to buy because there's not a strong incentive alignment. And again, I want to buy processes and teams of people that understand those processes to deliver the work. Beyond that, there's certainly revenue thresholds where it just doesn't make sense for me to go and buy that business because there's not going to be enough cash flow to really grow it in a significant manner and buy the business. Like I'm already going to buy the business and invest capital there. I need something that's already working reasonably well and has a margin that also allows me to make some pretty aggressive changes to grow it. So those are three things that I would highlight right off the bat. And one that I've found personally, I don't think many people really think that hard about is when even if the team is significant, if there's a lot of family involved, I tend not to look at those. That's just a whole layer of complexity and mess that I don't like to deal with.
Yeah, I get it. I was we were talking a little bit offline, and I was talking about my experience with acquisition.com, and had gone down there, and we're talking about deal flow, and I was telling you a little bit about how got an understanding of how the Hormozis and the team down there at acquisition.com down in Vegas, they look at companies and they rate companies, but they have a whole checklist of things, what they call value adders and value detractors. And so it's all scored, right? So like, cool, if you hit this revenue threshold, this is good value. Like this gets a 4 or a 5. If gross profit is another one. So some of these metrics, but then when we get into the value detractors, things are like, you mentioned it's a small town. So geographically, what is the ability to scale? Value that might be a 1. Right. Or actually it might be a negative, right? That might be a -1 or a -2 or a -3. Key man risk was another one that they identified as, what we were talking about before, that unicorn position, right? Key man risk. So that could be I think that was maybe a -3, right? If you have like 1 or 2 of those people on your team, that if they left or something happened, they got hit by a car, the business would essentially disappear, wouldn't be able to operate the way that it was. It's a huge risk. So they value it that way. And I found is so many companies, the company that you're referring to that's 3 years in business, 2 years in business, whatever, they haven't gone through the hurdles, they don't have the tenure that you're looking for, will tend to overvalue the company. And I think that is one thing that a lot of business owners understand, or that comes to a lot of business owners, not even in those early stages, but also if they've been around for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, having an understanding of like what the business means to you, what it's worth to you, is probably not worth nearly as much to somebody else. And having those like a very, you know, a very high level perspective, if you can stand back at 30,000 feet and really ask that question, is it worth as much as I feel it's worth, which is always kind of a bad indicator, right? How do we feel? Because nobody knows, and nobody is going to feel as closely tied to your business as you do as the founder. But having a a third party financial audit of the company is going to do wonders. It's going to show, okay, your books are ready. It's fully audited. It's ready to hand over if somebody wants to look under the hood. Is also one thing. But then it's like real estate as well, right? It's only worth what somebody is going to pay for it. And that's a hard pill for people to swallow as well.
I draw a lot of parallels because people understand buying and selling a house, and that's so much less emotionally charged than a business that you've built over decades, that probably a good part of your identity is wrapped up into. And so if I can just relate it, like, look, I get it. You might have an amazing house that's perfect for me that you think is worth $1 million. And I agree, like I would pay $1 million, but ultimately if the bank comes back and says it's a $750,000 house, I can't buy your house. Like it doesn't matter if I'm aligned with a vision. So that's a parallel that I draw. And I was watching one of your more recent episodes, and you talked a lot about expectation setting and how powerful that is. And that's something that I have to get ahead of right away when I first start engaging with business owners, because they have what I call their heart number, right?
Mm.
Like what's the heart number that you have? And it's always significantly higher than what maps back to what their business can command in the market.
Yeah, and you see this at different times throughout throughout history, right? Rather, you're using the housing market, for instance, as an example or as a parallel to buying businesses. In 2 years ago, a lot of homes here in the Vancouver area were worth a tremendous amount more than they are now, right? And you get like there's so many right now. I think in Toronto just came out, there was like 54 condos in all of Toronto sold last month. That was like, those numbers are wildly low. We have here where we are just outside of Vancouver, there's 200 listings, which is like a year and a half worth of inventory and on the market, whereas like a stable market has 6 months of inventory backed up. And so you're seeing like these different stages, and I think that right now there's a lot of people that are interested in buying businesses. And so I think pretty quickly coming up here, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for businesses to be sold, specifically from people that they want to run their own business, but they see the challenges of starting your own business, the idea of purchasing a business that has already been through a lot of these hurdles. They've been through COVID, they've been through, different crashes, different cycles, and they can show some level of stability, is going to be snapped up by somebody that has money coming to them from their parents that are passing away, or like there's a huge amount of money. And Cody Sanchez was calling it the silver tsunami, and I've heard that term used a number of times, but it's a huge amount of money of cash that is transferring hands between family members, people that are parents that are going to be passing away, boomers that have been, selling, sitting in their big family home and choosing to downsize. And a lot of that money is going to people that their kids, their grandkids, and they don't know what to do with it. And they're looking for a way to invest it. And they are not 100% aligned, or they don't have 100% trust in putting their money into a bank. into crypto, into the real estate market. But the idea of buying a business that cash flows is becoming more and more appealing. And I think we're going to see a really strong time over the next 5, 6 years where a lot of businesses, a lot of trades and home service based businesses are going to be uh, just right to be sold if they're in the right position and they're doing the right things now. And that's, um, it's exciting to see. I think it's providing a huge amount of opportunity for people.
Absolutely. I saw a stat. I was at an M&A conference back in October that $14 trillion is going to trade hands in the next 10 years because of that silver tsunami that you're referencing. And unless we are equipping people to capture that value, a lot of it's going to be just lost. And so there's an obligation, not just an opportunity, but an obligation for continuing our economic stability and trajectory and making sure that that just doesn't, they're not shuttering and closing down because there's nobody to take over them, nobody to buy them. So that's one thing that I would highlight. But on the other side, when you get to a certain size and cash flow, we'll call it, whether it's EBITDA or whatever, private equity has so much dry powder waiting to deploy here. They've been hanging on to it, and they also are reading the tea leaves and understand that a massive opportunity to buy is coming, and they're ready. They're ready to deploy it.
Yeah, you're seeing that. I mean, I've gotten 4 or 5 emails from brokers over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, like I have never heard of, and they're just cold emailing saying, "Hey, have you ever considered selling the business?" And these are companies out of the States. These are companies, back east in Canada. I've sort of looked them up because I was interested, and there's a massive outreach right now for businesses that are doing well, that have some brand presence, that have been around for a while, that has some community equity in it, that has some brand equity in it, and there's I don't know. It's a wild opportunity, and this was something like if you were looking to purchase a business in 2023. Okay, so COVID hit. A lot of people were at home, and what we saw was there was a lot of people that were laid off from their jobs, a lot of people that were now moving, to different suburban areas. They were starting to rethink their lives. We saw a lot of new businesses pop up. A lot of people that decided, you know what? The government is paying me some money right now. This is pretty good. It's bought me a bit of time to consider what I want to do. I'm going to go and start a business. I think now is the time. And they start doing pretty well because there's a lot of money in the system. There's a lot of money, floating around. People have time on their hands. So business is good. You don't have to do a lot of marketing. You have some time on your hands. People are, wanting you to provide work to them. And then you go through a couple of tax cycles and you realize pretty quickly, I'm actually not making that much more money. I'm in fact not making much money at all. And I'm working way more because running a business is tough. Starting a business is tough. And then you hit that first cycle of pushback from the market. That first sense of shit, leads just aren't flowing to me like they were 6 months ago. I haven't been doing any marketing. People don't know who I am. And then it starts to get pretty real. And you start to realize, all right, maybe it's just easier if I go and work for somebody else because I need that stability. And the future doesn't look stable. And unless you've been through a few of those cycles or have been able to bear a few of those cycles in the past, then that future can start to look pretty scary. And if you were to buy a business, looking to buy a business in 2023, there was a huge amount of businesses that were started. And a lot of those businesses have shut down now because of that. Because of the fact that we hit a time where now leads became more expensive. They became few and further between. People started reining back on the money that they were spending. They stopped going out and eating as much at restaurants. They stopped putting as much money into their homes as they were. And now business starts to get real. And you have to go out and do all those businessy things. You have to go out and talk to people and meet with people and start to do, more and more marketing and get better on your media and start drawing an attention to your company and awareness, because those leads aren't coming to you. You need to now start going to them. And that's a skill that a lot of people don't learn. But if you were to buy that business, it was sort of at the top of that market. It was like the real estate prices were high. You probably overpay for a business. There was a lot of inventory, but that would just crash. And now that's why my long-winded story here is painting the landscape of, I think if those businesses have been around through that time, they've shown some stability, and somebody was to approach them to sell right now, you're going to be able to buy some really great businesses.
Potentially, for sure. There's a lot of people that got into it. I think, one of the episodes I was listening to, you were talking about how anybody could be an entrepreneur, but most shouldn't. And those are the kinds of people that are like, I'm going to go start a business. And now they're like, what have I done? It worked great when the market was hot and things came in easy, and they don't have the experience or the knowledge, or even sometimes the tenacity to weather, the markets and that resiliency to like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. I don't have the answer, but I'm going to have to figure it out here. So, yeah, I definitely caution people, because I think it's kind of in vogue right now. This idea of big corporate is bad, and I'm going to quit my W-2 or leave my W-2 and be my own boss. And that's a super attractive storyline and narrative. And a lot of people I see doing that and just kind of burning the ships, so to speak, have no idea what they're going to do if they actually go and buy a business afterwards. So
I was having this conversation a couple of days ago. We were recording with another woman, and I had made the comment that so many people make really, really tremendous number twos, number threes, number fours, like, in business. The number 45 at Google is like absolutely fucking killing it. And you know what I mean? But they're really, really own their role. They can stay in their zone of genius. They can kill it. They can make a lot of money. They can have a huge amount of impact, but they also don't need to necessarily deal with all of the other BS that they don't want to. And some people think that they want to deal with it, but most people don't. Most people, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people, they like the title of owner. They like the way that it sounds, but they don't want the sleepless nights worrying about whether you're going to make payroll. They don't want the sleepless nights thinking about how some client is, making your company a living hell, or if somebody's called in sick, how they're going to deal with that, or if somebody on the team isn't happy and they, need to offboard them or have a conversation about firing somebody. A lot of people don't want that pressure.
I've experienced it for sure. For sure. I'm curious, in your journey, building your own company, what was something that kind of shifted, like a mindset that had to change for you in going from like, hey, I've got a lot of construction experience and I think I'm going to build a company, to like actually enabling scaling?
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes back to our first year in business. When I started this company, so I was working for a large construction company prior to starting this business. I had worked with them for a number of years. I had saved up some money. I bought my first house. I was 22 years old. I bought my second just when I was 23, just before I started the company. And I had started the company. I now had 2 mortgages. I had a rental property with somebody in there. I had like 6 months maybe of savings. If like everything went to hell, I knew I could pay my mortgage. I could eat. I could breathe, but that was it. It was like no fun money, but I figured I had enough that I could stretch it. And if I did a couple of side jobs here and there, like I could make it work. So that was enough to get things going. And it wasn't, and it was like 6 or 7 months into business where my business partner and I, we had started the company. And the way that we used to run businesses, we wouldn't pay ourselves a salary because we didn't have enough money to pay ourselves a salary. It was like go out, find a project, do some work, get paid, and then we would sit on the floor. We would count out receipts. Figured, all right, we got paid this much. This is how much we owe, and so whatever's left is what we get. We didn't take into consideration taxes or anything like that. And then went to Quiznos for lunch one to get a sandwich, and it came through, ran through. We hadn't paid ourselves in a while, and I went to buy lunch, and my debit card was declined. I don't even know if I had a credit card at that point. And my debit card was declined. And I never used to have a credit card because for a long time I thought that debt was terrible and I didn't ever want that. I just paid with everything on a debit card. I'd like, you know, F you to to the banks, don't take my money. I'm not paying you interest. And so I paid with everything on a debit card. And I didn't have $9 to pay for my lunch. And so I had looked at my business partner and had just said, like, and this is never going to happen again. And we need to do something about it. And I need $9. So my sandwich is already through and I'm hungry. So can I borrow some money? But that was a huge turning point where I realized, okay, there's some stuff here that we don't know that we need to know. And then we were, I sought out, I started reading books, I started reaching out to mentors, I started talking to people. And, as driven as you are to do something, if you're not focusing on the right tasks or in the right areas, you're just not going to move anywhere. And so that was a big eye-opening point for us. And then it was this idea of, both my business partner and I were doing a lot of the same tasks together. And we were given some advice that we need to right now draw a line down the middle and decide who's owning what, which roles, define those roles. So that's what we did. One person was going to handle production, one person was going to handle sales, and we were going to absolutely do the best that we could in those positions, but give full ownership and autonomy to each individual to go and do what they needed to do. As soon as we did that, and we had a level of trust, and we focused on the one area that we knew that we were really good at, that allowed us to continue to grow.
Yeah.
And then hire that first person, hire that second person, train those people, and then just it went from there.
Awesome. I mean, it's good that you got that advice because I see that a lot where there's, when you have a partner, you do everything together, everything's, in tandem, and that actually adds a lot of drag to decision making. And, when you could be dividing and conquering, you're both stuck in the same meeting listening. And it's just like something that, again, like having a partner, like we should be able to do twice as much. If you structure it appropriately, yes, absolutely, it gives you leverage.
Yeah, otherwise you're paying two people to do the exact same thing, and you're burning hours, you're burning time, you're burning capital, and it doesn't make any sense. And that's one of the first things that I talk to business owners about when they're having discussions or they can't seem to move things forward. It's like, okay, well, why are you? I was talking to a good friend of mine. If he's listening, then that's awesome. I'll give him the same advice, and I'll rag on him a little bit here. But for 3 years, he was complaining about one of his employees because this employee didn't want to get his driver's license. And so he would go and he would pick up his employee and drive him around and drop him off at all of these different job sites, multiple job sites throughout the day. And he was complaining that he was not getting anything done. And he's like, I don't know why this kid's not getting his driver's license. I'm like, well, man, you're the one that's empowering this. Why would he have to go and get his driver's license and buy insurance and buy a vehicle if you are going to continue to pick him up and drive him around everywhere? Like this can't happen. And you're spending your time. How much is your time worth? What could you be doing if you weren't picking him up 3 times a day and dropping him off and bringing him tools and dropping off supplies and running to the hardware store and picking up a 2x4 and then going back and picking up a nail and then picking up a screw? Like, what else could you do with your time? But you're essentially his laborer, right? He's the one that's doing the work, and you're just running around picking this stuff up for him. Like, these are low level tasks that you should not be doing. And had to have that really hard conversation with him. And the worst part is most people know that they're doing it. They just can't get out of that. They just can't find that next step because they're hoping that this unicorn is going to walk into their lives and is going to solve all their problems for them. And that's one thing I've had to learn the hard way as well when it comes to hiring is you typically there's a cycle of pain that business owners go through or anybody goes through when they're looking to grow their business and they're looking at hiring. It's like they're too heavy in production or they're too heavy in sales. They can't handle it. So they go and they throw out an ad on ZipRecruiter or Indeed or wherever it is. And they get a flood of resumes come in and they do a couple interviews and they find one person and right away they have a great conversation with that person. They're like, I like you. Let's get you into the business. Already they're envisioning this pain being gone. They're feeling some relief because they're envisioning how this person is going to take all this pain off of their plate. And they just totally gloss over all the competency questions that they need to ask. They become pretty friendly and then they hand over all this responsibility. Something goes sideways. And then they just take it all back. They lose that person. They burned all that time because they haven't asked the right questions and they haven't spent the time to really determine, is this the right person for this business? Or am I just hiring somebody because it's alleviating this pain that I'm feeling right now? And a lot of people fall into that trap. And so they hire the wrong person. They hand over a little bit of responsibility. It doesn't go well. They fire them. Then they don't want to, then they have that fear of hiring somebody else. Then by the time they get back to it, they go to hire somebody else. They say, okay, I'm not going to make these mistakes the next time, but I really need some help. And they get back into that cycle, bring somebody else on. They can't meet their expectations because a lot of times they haven't actually written out their expectations. It's just like, you're going to come to work. Why can't you think for yourself? Why can't you do this? Why can't you just, be good? They're like, I don't even know what good is because I was never given a benchmark as to how I'm supposed to be performing. I don't know if I'm performing well. I don't know if I'm performing poorly. And you're not giving me any guidance because you're too busy driving around picking up 2x4s and picking up nails and picking up screws to actually spend the time to tell me if I'm doing well or not. So I'm kind of lost, man. And you start seeing these vicious cycles, and I have these conversations over and over and over again. But yeah, it's a vicious thing. But that's why when you mentioned some of the things that you look at, tenure being one of them, and I love that. Right? How long has the company been around? Number of employees generally means, all right, well, there's some people there that can know how things are being run. So if somebody does leave, then somebody has at least hopefully like a 60% idea of what that job looked like and what that person was doing so they can help fill that role. I think those are two great indicators as to whether a business is right for sale or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Redundancy definitely mitigates a lot of risk in a business for sure.
What is your day to day or what does your week look like? You were saying you're looking at a few businesses a week. You're making some offers. What do those conversations look like when you're having the first conversations? Because at this point, you're not interviewing an employee. You're essentially interviewing a business. You're looking at a business in the same way that somebody would, looking at an employee to hire. You're thinking about bringing this business into your life to grow your portfolio, to continue growing wealth. But what are those conversations or those early conversations look like? Are you having these conversations typically with brokers? Are you talking to the owners, the founders of the businesses? Or at what level are you sort of getting into the weeds to look at nuts and bolts? How far do you go before you're looking at making an offer?
So initial conversations kind of depend on whether this is an on-market listing with a broker involved, or I'm approaching a business owner kind of out of the blue and saying, hey, are you open to a conversation about potentially taking a step back or exiting your business? And I leave it pretty open-ended when I'm approaching somebody out of the blue. The first conversation, though, is really about establishing rapport. And if there's any chance of a deal being made, it's going to require just agony, to be honest. And people have this like, it's easy to get excited about selling a business, and I'm going to go on a trip, and I'm going to, live my best life and hang out with the grandkids or whatever it is. There is pain standing between you and that if you actually have a sellable business. And so we're going to have to want to trust each other, work together, and have trust in order to navigate the interim. And so that first call is all about rapport, and there's a lot of similarities that you can draw between like a sales funnel and what I'm doing is establishing rapport, and then really understanding their movers, their motivators, and pain, right? Like ultimately, like what's causing you to being open to exiting your business now? And it could be my kids don't care about my business. It could be I'm tired and burned out. It could be so many things, but I need to get crystal clear on why are we having this conversation right now, and get past those surface answers and dig into that. And really that's where the I don't want to say the best deals happen where there's like tremendous pain, but that's where people are super open to collaborating, right? Like we need to be collaborative to figure out how we're going to make this work. And so, hey, you got to like me, you got to trust me to want to do that. And then there's got to be something that's really pressing. It's not just like a minor inconvenience. Then you're like, maybe I'm open to selling. There has to be some real kind of distress there that then I can figure out how can I alleviate that, and maybe I'm not the right person, but that's what I'm really looking to identify in kind of the preliminary conversations.
How open are people, do you think, to telling you the truth right off the bat?
It depends. When there's a broker involved, I find people are very guarded, and they've probably been coached to do that. And, the broker's also looking to try to maneuver the conversation in a very structured way and hedge off certain questions, so like almost like an attorney, like, don't answer that, like, like, hey, like, tell me, like, is there anybody that like, if they walked out today of your business, that would be massively detrimental to your business. The broker's going to jump in. They're like, you know what? They've done a lot of good things. They hired somebody that, where they'll try to hedge that answer off. So when I'm connecting though with somebody kind of out of the blue, I think I actually this is something that's become a part of my playbook. They're too trusting almost. They're just so relieved to have somebody show interest in their business and talk about it and get to unload this stuff. I'm the one that's like pumping the brakes and say like, hey, if you're talking to anybody else about this kind of stuff, you should have them sign an NDA, right? Like, do you have one? Here, let me send you the soft copy of one that I've used. This is not legal advice, but use it. Use it. Like, I hope you have multiple conversations with people, but use this and protect yourself. Like, I've learned the hard way that this is one of those foundational things. And so it's very different if it's on market or off market.
Do you think better deals are found on market or off market? Is it similar to real estate where, as a developer, you kind of know that if it's publicly listed on Zillow down where you are, or realtor.ca, the MLS, like if it's publicly listed, it's probably overpriced. And so you always want to find these like off market deals, these little pocket deals that somebody has that they're bringing to you before it goes public. Do you find that that's the same when you're looking at businesses and going through a broker?
I think there are some parallels to be drawn there, and mapping it back to real estate investing, some of the challenges also would map directly over, right? So if I'm approaching somebody out of the blue, their financials probably aren't in order, and they haven't had somebody going through and organizing their files in a concise manner for me to analyze. And I'm gonna have to do a lot of educating on like, here's what I need and here's why I need it, and this is, what drives value in your business. But it's worth the work. I think that you can get a lot more, again, collaboration and creativity, which nowadays is really important in getting a deal done. It's not enough just to have a sellable business. There's a lot of different things at play where we're gonna have to get creative and sit side by side, not across the table from each other, and negotiate. And that happens a lot more freely in off-market deals.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. That was what I was assuming the answer was. I was just, I'm picturing these deals of, you find this company, you kind of bump into the owner, you've been eyeing them down, you've been chalking them up, you've been, maybe shoot them a message on social media a little bit. Hey, you want to go grab a beer, sit down, let me hear about all your problems. Oh, cool. Like I'm kind of picturing this sense of, sitting down and getting to know somebody, and then just kind of like popping the question, oh, by the way, are you open to selling your business? Would you ever be open to selling your business, and starting the conversation that way? But man, yeah, it's a funny world out there. If somebody was looking to sell their business and they had some pain and they were looking to, at some point offload it in the next year, 2 years, what advice would you give to that business owner or that company if they were going to prepare themselves for sale to make them appealing to somebody like yourself that may come along to purchase it?
The number one thing that I would highlight is you have to keep your foot on the gas. I see great businesses that ultimately start, exploring exits, and whether they talk to a broker or somebody like me or somebody else, and they take their foot off the gas, and then revenue starts to decline and slip, profit margins go down, they're starting to get tired, they hire more people, so their cost of goods are going up, and suddenly this great business that could have commanded top dollar has been compressed down to, gosh, I don't know how to make this work, in the last 12 months. I don't know how to, and then we have to like almost revive it, to make it bankable or something like that. So keeping your foot on the gas is one of the top things that is squarely in your control. That will be a total deal killer.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but I could see that, right?
Yeah.
They start this conversation. Maybe they have one or two about selling, and they're like, I'm just going to sell it. But it takes 2 years to actually sell, and maybe you're having a few conversations along the way. And in that 2 years, you've kind of lost that drive. That fire's kind of going out because you think at some point there's going to be a sale. So you stop doing the things that you need to do to keep the business going.
Yes.
Whereas if you keep your foot on the gas and you know that people are looking at the business and you keep driving that revenue, you keep making it more appealing. And when that offer comes in, you're like, actually, well, over the last 24 months, we've increased revenue. So now our asking price isn't here. It's actually way up here. So do you want it? You're going to have to pay for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's tremendous. It's a deal killer. I put it even in my initial kind of offer language that if your numbers, we're getting towards the end of the year, if next year's numbers don't match or exceed this year's, it's going to be impossible for us to close at the number that the offer I'm going to make you today.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I love it. David, it's getting to the top of the hour here. Appreciate you so much spending some time with us. Super insightful. It's been an awesome conversation. We got way more to talk about offline
Yes.
too. Can't wait for that. We were talking beforehand. We got to break it down on the pod. At some point there, we were talking before, and we are just like, man, we got to start recording. We're running out of time here. We got to get going. Let's make it happen. But yeah, brother, thank you so much for being here with us, shedding your light, shedding your love. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Topline Ops on Instagram, TOPLINEOPS Ops. And then like I'm on LinkedIn, David Hori, and I'm here to help people. So if I can share something, whether it's a quick playbook or anything that I've learned along the way that helps you elevate the trajectory of your business, or think about exiting, or you want to understand what your business is potentially worth, I'm here to help people. That's why I'm ultimately in the business, is helping people thrive professionally and personally. So that's where you find me.
Hell yeah. Well, appreciate you, brother. And happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you
You're
so
down,
much.
you're down there, down south. My American brothers and sisters.
Absolutely.
For the rest of you, all the listeners that are out there that are still with us, appreciate you. Appreciate your time. Like always, stay blessed, rock and roll, peace. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.